Can I ask a follow-up about the introduce yourself? Oh, yeah, Jan Fagan, second year PhD student, Department of History. I want to push a bit on the question of ordo liberalism and domestic antecedents, kind of to allied and pro-competition policies. Can you expand a bit on these ball-bearing effects you talk about in the ordo competition, and why you see them as a retreat rather than something deeper within that Freiburg school, which is, well, especially by the 60s, rallying against this kind of idea of naive naturalism in markets?
Yeah. That leads us to the deeper identification of a problem of what the Freiburg school is, because of course it, as you mentioned yourself, it goes through several conditions as well, and beginning in the late 50s is clearly dominated by Hayek, and then Hayek does return to Freiburg at some point, to Europe, and goes to Freiburg. The relative defeat is, and I probably shouldn't have said ball bearings, because it sounds like something that makes the whole thing run. And I don't like this analogy very much so. So thank you for being critical of this. That's a really very well taken point. Now, the point I'm making is first, just looking at the lawmaking process that starts somewhere around 1948, or actually it starts in 1944, when the German economics ministry, which at the time is a terrible story, led by an SS man, admits a group of non-Nazis to form a basically secret study group planning for a post-war period. The guy he admits is a certain Ludwig Erhard. The point is precisely these guys are not members of any Nazi organizations, so they will essentially be acceptable to the Allies after the last war. And they basically start thinking about how to reconstitute Germany according to the lines of a modern market-oriented society. These guys are writing the first ideas, first drafts of antitrust law, and it's very radical. It's very radical. It's like Sherman Act if not stronger. Basically, they don't go as far as Hayek is saying we need competitive money creation, no free banking. They don't go that far, but they stop pretty short of it. And then you see this legislative process from 1949 to it stops basically in 1960 with the Credit Act. And what you see is it's kind of it's a series of retreats. It's really kind of a losing battle for the ordoliberalism. In the end, defeat is not complete. Of course, cartelization is not reintroduced. That is clear. But there are so many loopholes and escape lanes and here an exemption, there an exemption, there an exemption, that if you're smart enough to basically put the right thing on the right name tag on your dollar, then you are exempt from the antitrust law. And there's an issue with that. Just the biggest ones, of course, heavy industry. The one industry for which all this was actually meant to be originally, that has to do with the fact that it's being partly Europeanized. So heavy industry actually kind of gets its dream fulfilled that goes back to before World War I, which is to have a politically sanctioned pan-European culture. That's what they get in the show. And then agriculture, it differs from Nazi planning methods in the sense that it's now no longer with price controls, but rather with quantity rationing. But otherwise. So I would quite strongly argue that that really the range of the scope of economic activity that is really under the watch of the antitrust law is greatly reduced in the legislative process to fully aim at that. And what is particularly almost offensive is the fact that the way this is organized basically is reenacts legislation from the 1930s and 70s, watered down form. But this is a terribly unpc thing to say.
very complex topic. I particularly found interesting, just to begin on the issues, that London School of Economics has become also a School of Economics and Political Science. That both the second has come in, and that is very interesting to me, in the sense of relating private good to public good. There are, taking a long-term view, by the way, I'm Thomas Siddiqui, I'm from urban design, and my work has been on causation, and my interest has been in long-term evaluation of large-scale technologies and organizations. So that is the background in which I'm from. Taking a long-term view, when you look at the First World War and the Second World War, and how things transpired and how the learning process took place, Europe-wide learning process, that in the beginning, after the First World War, as you had mentioned, Germany was only partially defeated. And there was the Treaty of Vienna, Paris Peace Conference in 1919, and then it was realized, that buying German cooperation, as you've mentioned, was not necessarily a good idea, because eventually, as they realized, there was moral hazard also. I mean, all the excessive debt accumulation that was going on with Germany, using that gold standard to extend their leverage. So, but it eventually ended in it being declared as risky by the Young Plan, and there was devaluation and social collapse. So there was certainly a learning that followed after this, after Second World War, shifting from Morgenthau Plan, which was less trusting of Germany and its also its military power, to the Marshall Plan, which was much more, I'd say, took a positive spin on things. And why they took a positive spin is something which I call looking at the angel in the details, because there was certainly the position that to protect Germany against creditors. Now the question was raised here. You have to also ensure that moral hazard doesn't take place. But what is the period over which you look at moral hazard? It had been protected then, and now, if you look at it, it has benefited from the protection. But when it comes to Greece, where is it in terms of its returning the favor? So here, that is something which was implicit in the Marshall Plan. And you have raised the issue of the theory of imperfect capital markets and sovereign debts, in that about how there is a limit to the credit that can be given in terms of volume. And there's a glass ceiling. So if there's a credit ceiling and a glass ceiling. The question is, how do we arrive at it? How do we understand this? And I think there is an intuitive understanding of some underlying principles here, which go beyond enforceable property rights to one of free society, of exchange, which is not necessarily completely enforceable. So in that sense, if we get into a couple of historical issues, which was raised about ancient Rome, that Julius Caesar essentially either killed people that they conquered or made them slaves. There is another take on this, which was by Charles Van Doren, that the ancient Romans also gave property rights to those areas that they conquered, and their people were allowed to be in the Senate. This was an example of what I would say a visionary view of self-interest. And that was also in Henry Ford, for that matter, that pricing the cars in such a way that the labor could afford to buy them, and therefore they expanded their market. this has also been true for Roy Vagelos, who had been to Chad as the CEO of Merck, and had the biggest R&D budget of $1 billion, and yet he gave it to Chad, in terms of free vaccines. So why did he do it? So why do people exercise self-interest at the same time are willing to compromise it for certain benefits? And that's the thing which I feel is at the heart of the issue, and where the free society issue itself becomes a question, a conundrum, that you can have society only by caring, but if you are free, why should you care for the other?
This is so complex that, of course, I don't have an answer. I mean, your last point about to which you keep returning about magnanimity and free society. I think this point is very well taken, because it really applies to the historical case of post-war Germany. This is just absolutely amazing. I mean, the Allied troops are coming in and are appalled by what they see. It's known from Secret Service reports, from refugees, whatever, that these things have been going on. But it comes as a complete shock once people really see what's happening. The very first response is the harsh one. So it is known that that the inhabitants of neighboring villages and towns were forcibly walked to the concentration camp in order to see this. That response, interestingly, is not the steady state. It's not it's not where it kind of rests. One of the pictures I wanted to bring, then I forgot to upload it, is another iconic photo, which is black GIs handing out candies to German kids from a jeep. This is the thing that this is probably the quintessential granny tale of the American invasion of Germany. This is absolutely quintessential. It's as important as this story, as this iconic photo of the big three in Potsdam.
Yes.
And it is quite amazing. But let me try to put it in a slightly bigger perspective. That also brings me basically to the first attempt to answer to the many very substantive and deep comments that I got from my discussants. We can. Let me try to make a distinction between three kinds of peace arrangement. One is, let me call it Marshallian, not in the economic sense, but really in the historical sense. The second would be the Carthaginian peace, and the third would, to borrow this from you, the Mongolian peace. And it's clear which peace arrangement was the Mongolian one. That's probably the New Order of 1914. The Carthaginian peace is the intention of the Morgenthau Plan. It is not Mongolian. The Goebbels propaganda made it Mongolian. Basically, the German propaganda picked it up in around late 44, early 45, and said, look, this is what they want. They basically want to. They are reducing us to rubble already, and basically they are going to starve us to death. And this is basically, if you talk to people on the street in Germany, this is still what they believe about the war. If you look at Germany's manufacturing structure today, it's basically the realization of the Morgenthau Plan. Because heavy industry is basically gone. Aircraft industry, there's still a little bit, but it's Europeanized, so it's okay. And coal mining is gone. So there's still some beer brewers and some precision instruments. I understand that the country is also still quite successful. So one could argue that the Morgenthau Plan was, in some sense, probably extremely modern, because it was essentially establishing an industry structure that market forces established on their own without much political intervention as soon as the post-war boom was over. But that is, of course, now I'm of course reading far too much. That's pretty clear. So why was the Carthaginian peace, the Mongolian peace was never in question, but why was the Carthaginian peace given up when? And I really like the many comments I got on this from both the discussants and also from the floor. I I didn't describe the struggle among the different departments in detail because I had an earlier paper, much earlier paper from like 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, where we did this.